Welcome to the debate. Today we are looking at a practice that sits rather uncomfortably between ancient fasting rituals and modern consumer capitalism, the juice cleanse. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry promising a biological reset, a way to, wash away the sins of the modern diet. But we are here to answer a very specific and I think rather contentious question. Does a regimen of pure fruit and vegetable juice actually help the body remove toxins, or is the entire concept just a fundamental misunderstanding of human physiology?
It is. It's a question that really forces us to look at the machinery of the body, specifically the liver and the gut, versus, the psychology of the mind. You have this massive wellness movement claiming we're all toxic and need a clean out. And then you have the medical establishment that says the body is basically a self-cleaning oven that never needs our help.
And that while the medical term detox is, and I'll concede this up front, often misused by marketing departments, the practice of a juice cleanse serves a vital function. It acts as a dietary reset, a sort of behavioral circuit breaker for the overindulgence of modern life, and a method of high-density nutrient delivery.
And I will be arguing that detoxification, at least in the context of drinking juice, is a physiological lie. I think the evidence shows that the body handles this process completely autonomously 24 hours a day, and that interfering with it through these restrictive, low-protein, low-fiber regimens can actually cause inflammation and metabolic distress.
Okay, so let's start with the context. We aren't just talking about, drinking a smoothie for breakfast. We are talking about the cleanse as a full-on cultural phenomenon. As reported in the CrossFit Journal, this has just exploded into a massive business. It's moved from the fringe right into the mainstream. And why? Because people feel a loss of control. We live in an environment flooded with processed foods and environmental pollutants and stress.
Control is a powerful motivator, I agree. But usually when we try to control complex biological systems based on intuition, rather than, say, the actual mechanism, we tend to break things.
I don't think we are breaking anything by consuming vegetables. In this context, I viewed the cleanse not as a medical procedure in the hospital sense, but really as a jump start. You have athletes like Crystal Conyers, who was featured in that same CrossFit Journal piece, and she uses a 5-day cleanse as a resting period. She describes it as cleaning the body from the inside out after consuming inflammatory foods like gluten or dairy. It's a deliberate pause, a way to just stop the influx of garbage.
I want to jump on that phrase immediately. Cleaning from the inside out. It sounds so intuitive, right? Like scrubbing a dirty pan or flushing a radiator. But biology doesn't work like a kitchen sink. The idea that your body accumulates dirt that requires a specific solvent, in this case juice, to wash it away, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of how we work.
How so? I mean, we know toxins accumulate. We know we carry body burdens of various chemicals.
We do. But we need to define toxins properly to understand how they leave. According to the MD Anderson Cancer Center, toxins generally fall into 2 categories. You have endotoxins, waste your body makes internally, like urea. And then you have exotoxins, which come from outside, pollutants, pesticides, medications. The liver is the machine that has evolved over millions of years to handle both. It acts like a chemical processing plant, not a filter that gets clogged. The British Dietetic Association is incredibly blunt on this. They call the whole idea of a detox diet nonsense and a marketing myth.
Nonsense feels a little dismissive of the reality of the modern diet. I mean, even if the liver is a self-sufficient processing plant, every machine has a load limit. We are packing the liver with stressors it wasn't evolved to handle at this volume. Alcohol, refined sugars, fried foods. Dr. Thomas Aloya from MD Anderson notes specifically the danger of packing the liver full of fat, sugar, or alcohol.
Sure, overload is real. Fatty liver disease is very real.
Right. So my argument is that a cleanse is effective via negativa, by what it removes. By cutting those inputs for 3 to 5 days, you aren't teaching the liver how to work. You're simply allowing the inbox to empty out. You're giving the machine a moment where the input is basically zero, so it can catch up on the backlog. It's not that the juice is magic, it's that the absence of the bad stuff allows the body to reach homeostasis.
But is that state actually homeostasis, or is it a metabolic crisis masquerading as health? When you look at the rapid weight loss people celebrate during these cleanses, which they often cite as visual proof that toxins are leaving, it's physiological sleight of hand. MD Anderson clarifies this weight loss is largely fluid associated with glycogen depletion.
Right, glycogen being the stored sugar in our muscles and liver. Correct. For every gram of glycogen you store about 3 to 4 grams of water. You stop eating solid food, you burn through the glycogen for energy, and you just pee out the water. You look leaner in the mirror in 48 hours. But, and this is more worrying, you risk losing lean muscle mass. You aren't losing fat, you're losing the engine that burns the fat. And regarding Dr. Aloy's point about liver fat, he explicitly states that fat in the liver is on a one-way street. Once it's there, a 3-day juice fast does not flush it out. Only long-term, sustained lifestyle changes do that. The reset you're describing might actually be a metabolic crash where the body starts eating itself to find amino acids. I think we need to distinguish between a crash and just a caloric deficit that prompts a shift. But before we get to metabolic rate, I want to press on the nutrient aspect. We aren't talking about water fasting here. We are talking about flooding the body with micronutrients. Take celery juice, for example, which has been incredibly popular. It's often dismissed as just expensive water. But nutritional analysis from sources like Alibaba highlights that it provides essential hydration, vitamin K for blood clotting and bone health, and vitamin C. It's a potassium-rich electrolyte delivery system.
It's certainly better than a soda. I'm not anti-vegetable.
Exactly. If someone replaces a liter of sugary soda or a coffee loaded with syrup with a liter of fresh celery or spinach juice, you cannot tell me that isn't a net positive for their physiology. You are providing the raw materials the body needs.
Replacing soda with water is also a net positive, but water doesn't claim to be a magical elixir that scrubs your cells. Look, I'm not disputing that vegetables are good for you. I'm disputing the mechanism of detox. Let's look at the actual science of how the liver works, because the details really matter here. The IRS Journal breaks this down beautifully. The liver uses specific enzymatic pathways. You have phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification.
Walk us through that, because this is where the science of the cleanse usually gets very vague and hand-wavy.
Right. Phase I involves oxidation, reduction, and hydrolysis. Essentially, the liver takes a toxin, say a pesticide, and makes it chemically reactive. It's like breaking a window to get the glass out of the frame. The toxin actually becomes more dangerous in this intermediate stage. Then you have phase 2, or conjugation. This is where the liver attaches a molecule, like glutathione or sulfur, to that reactive toxin to make it water-soluble so you can pee it out.
And your argument is that juice doesn't help this.
My argument is that juice might actually unbalance it. This is a complex chemical process involving amino acids, protein. Drinking kale juice doesn't catalyze phase 2 because you're often lacking the very amino acids necessary for conjugation. If you ramp up phase 1 with certain compounds found in plants but starve phase 2 of protein, you potentially have a buildup of those reactive intermediate metabolites. You aren't detoxing, you're creating a traffic jam of reactive toxins. And frankly, commercial cleanses rarely identify which toxins they're supposedly targeting, a point raised by Medical Express. It's a solution in search of a problem.
I appreciate the biochemical breakdown. It's a fair point that protein is required for conjugation, and perhaps that speaks to why a cleanse should only be a few days long. However, you're looking at the liver in isolation. I'm looking at the systemic effect. When you consume these juices, you are hydrating the system and providing the vitamins that act as cofactors. But beyond the liver, there is the issue of the gut. You mentioned muscle mass earlier, but the gut is also a system that can be overwhelmed. A short-term liquid diet can provide a break from the mechanical work of digestion.
Ah, the resting the gut theory?
Yes. I mean, we are constantly forcing our digestive tract to churn through heavy proteins, fibers, processed additives. Giving that muscular tube a break allows inflammation in the lining to settle down. It's like resting a sprained ankle.
That is actually one of the most persistent and, I would argue, dangerous myths in this entire debate. This idea of resting the gut. Margot Novell, a registered dietitian featured in the CrossFit Journal, explains that the gut is a muscle. Like any muscle, if you don't challenge it, it can atrophy. It needs work to stay strong. But the bigger issue is the microbiome. We have brand new data from Northwestern Now And Dr. Melinda Ring, that is, well, it's quite damning regarding these liquid diets.
Damning in what way?
They found that a juice-only diet for just 3 days significantly altered the microbiome, and not for the better. The study showed a decrease in beneficial bacteria like firmicutes and an increase in bacteria associated with inflammation, specifically protobacteria, in the oral microbiome.
But change isn't inherently bad. If you're moving away from a junk food diet, wouldn't you expect the microbiome to shift? Maybe the bad bacteria are dying off?
In this case, the mechanism suggests a negative shift. And the reason is simple: fiber. When you juice, you strip away the pulp. You strip away the fiber matrix. Fiber is the fuel that feeds the beneficial bacteria in your gut. When they eat fiber, they produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, which is anti-inflammatory. By removing the fiber, you are essentially starving the good bacteria, and at the same time, you are feeding the sugar-loving bacteria with the high fructose load of the fruit juice. You aren't resetting the gut, you're inducing dysbiosis, an imbalance.
I have to concede that the fiber issue is significant. The Mayo Clinic actually suggests that if you are going to go this route, you should blend rather than juice, specifically to keep that fiber matrix intact. So that seems like a solvable problem within the framework of a cleanse. If we blended, we'd keep the fiber.
But then it's not a juice cleanse, is it? It's just eating pureed food. And most of the commercial products on the market are cold-pressed, which means the fiber is gone.
Perhaps, but I want to challenge the idea that the shift is purely catastrophic. For many people, their modern microbiome is already in a state of severe dysbiosis from processed foods. The shift seen in 3 days might be a shock to the system, yes, but is it worse than a weekend of binge drinking and eating fried food? The juice cleanse often acts as the intervention that stops that behavior. Even if the microbiome takes a temporary hit, the cessation of alcohol and trans fats is the bigger win.
But at what cost? You mentioned the sugar load. Let's talk about the metabolic reality of that. Crystal Kanyes in the CrossFit Journal warns that some store-bought juices contain as much as 120 grams of sugar. That is an enormous amount of fructose hitting the liver all at once. Without fiber to blunt the absorption, you get these massive insulin spikes.
Well, that depends entirely on the juice. A green juice, celery, spinach, cucumber, is very different from an apple-heavy blend.
Even so, the response is drastic. We have the account of Kika Schermerhorn, an athlete who did one of these cleanses. She describes turning gray, breaking out in cold sweats, having her heart race. Her friends told her that's the toxins leaving the body. But physiologically, that was hypoglycemia. That was a blood sugar crash, followed by an adrenaline spike. That is a metabolic crisis, not a healing event.
Keika's experience does sound extreme and certainly points to doing it incorrectly. Likely too much fruit, not enough hydration, or maybe an underlying sensitivity. But let's look at Teresa Godfrey's experience, also from the CrossFit Journal. She admitted the first few days were hard. She felt tired. But then she described a feeling of floating, a break from the obsession with food. She said it was 100% an exercise in self-control.
That floating feeling. I hear that a lot.
It's significant. In a world where we are addicted to dopamine hits from food, where we eat because we're bored or stressed, the detox is mental. It breaks the cycle of mindless eating. That psychological cleanse has value that perhaps doesn't show up in a liver enzyme test. It signals to the self, I am in control of what enters my body.
I worry about romanticizing that floating sensation. Physiologically, lightheadedness and that detached feeling are often symptoms of an electrolyte imbalance or severe caloric restriction. The NCCIH warns that these fasts can lead to dangerous electrolyte imbalances and even kidney stones, particularly if you're consuming high oxalate juices like beets or spinach without calcium to bind them.
Those are risks, certainly, if you have pre-existing conditions.
And regarding the psychological benefit, the Medical Express Review noted something fascinating in animal studies. In mice, the stress of severe energy restriction actually changed stress neurocircuitry to promote binge eating later. The brain perceives the famine and wires itself to gorge when food becomes available. And we see this in the anecdotes. Teresa Godfrey's group had a massive pig out the moment the cleanse ended. The frat boy in her office couldn't work because he was starving. This isn't building a healthy relationship with food, it's a binge-restrict cycle disguised as health.
I see why you interpret it that way, but let me offer a different perspective. For someone like Crystal Canas, it wasn't about the binge later. It was about the discipline of the moment. She uses it 2 or 3 times a year as a ritual. It's not a permanent diet, it's a signal. And while the weight loss might be water weight initially, seeing the scale move can be the motivation someone needs to stick to a healthier path after the 3 days. The placebo effect, if we want to call it that, is still in effect. If believing they are clean helps them eat better next week, isn't that a win?
Not if the method used to get there causes physical harm. We haven't even touched on the dental aspect. The Northwestern study highlighted that the oral microbiome changes rapidly, much faster than the gut. You are bathing your teeth in acid and sugar, altering the bacterial landscape of your mouth towards inflammation. And for what? For a feeling of control? I would argue that true control is feeding your body the protein and fiber it needs to function, not starving it into a state of floating delusion. MD Anderson explicitly states that the only vitamin you need during cancer treatment is a daily multivitamin, and that some herbal detoxes are actually toxic to the liver. We are potentially hurting the very organ we claim to be helping.
Toxic is a strong word for vegetable juice, though. I agree that herbal supplements are a different, unregulated beast. But let's circle back to the practical application. The Alibaba source on celery juice makes a very practical point. For 95% of wellness seekers, the cleansing label creates unnecessary complexity, but the juice itself fits into a balanced diet. If we strip away the word detox, which I agree is scientifically loaded, and call it a high-nutrient, low-calorie hydration protocol, does it not have utility?
If you frame it that way, as a beverage choice within a balanced diet, I have no issue. Drink your celery juice, enjoy it. But that isn't what a cleanse is. A cleanse is an exclusionary diet. It is only juice. And the Medical Express review was categorical. There is no compelling evidence to support the use of detox diets for weight management or toxin elimination. In fact, they found that based on an average person's needs, these diets don't even meet daily protein requirements for a child weighing 23 kilograms.
That is a startling statistic.
You are catabolizing your own muscle tissue. You are literally eating your own engine to power the machine for 3 days.
That is a compelling argument regarding protein, and I would certainly agree that any cleanse extending beyond a few days risks significant muscle loss. However, I'm not convinced that a short-term intervention, 24 to 72 hours, causes catastrophic muscle loss in a healthy adult. The body is resilient, it has stores, and I think you're underestimating the behavioral circuit breaker aspect. Modern food is engineered to be hyper-palatable. It overrides our satiety signals. A juice cleanse, by its very starkness, forces a reset of the palate. Participants often report that an apple tastes incredibly sweet after a cleanse, or that they no longer crave salt. That sensory reset is profound.
But you can achieve a sensory reset by eating whole foods. You can eat broccoli and chicken and brown rice and cut out the processed sugar, and your palate will reset without the hypoglycemia and the cortisol spike. The Mayo Clinic says it plainly. Juicing is no healthier than eating whole fruits and vegetables. In fact, it is less healthy because of the missing fiber. So why choose the expensive, restrictive, physiologically stressful option when you could just eat vegetables? It seems we are choosing the magic potion route because it feels like a ritual, not because it is better science.
Because rituals matter. Humans are ritualistic creatures. We like clear beginnings and endings. Just eating vegetables is a lifestyle. A cleanse is an event. And sometimes people need an event to transition into a lifestyle. As Crystal Cotton has said, it takes a certain type of person to do it correctly. It's not for the person looking for a quick weight loss fix, but for the person looking for a resting period.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy the resting period logic when the physiology says stress response. I keep going back to the MD Anderson expert, Dr. Aloya. Moderation is the key to helping the liver, not extreme oscillation between packing it full of trash and then starving it on sugar water. That oscillation is stress. And the British Dietetic Association warns that for some people, drinking too much fluid can be dangerous. Hyponatremia is real. The risks: Kidney stones, electrolyte imbalance, muscle loss, metabolic slowdown seem to vastly outweigh the benefit of feeling like you did a ritual.
I think we have to acknowledge that for the general population, the risk of kidney stones from 3 days of spinach juice is low compared to the risk of chronic disease from their standard diet. But I hear you. The medical consensus is clear that the term detox is a misnomer. However, I maintain that if viewed as a break rather than a medical procedure, it has value. It's a way to flood the body with vitamin C and K, as noted in the Alibaba report, and to practice self-denial in a culture of instant gratification.
And I maintain that the body has a detox team already. The liver, the kidneys, and the lungs. They work 24/7. They need fiber to bind toxins in the gut. They need protein to fuel the enzymatic pathways in the liver. And they need hydration. They do not need a $65 a day juice subscription that removes the fiber and protein. The Northwestern study showing inflammation after just 3 days is a smoking gun for me. You are trying to heal the body, but you might be inflaming it.
This has been a fascinating look at the clash between wellness culture and physiological reality. I think we can agree that while the toxin removal claim is scientifically flawed, the desire for a reset, for a clean slate, is very real.
Absolutely. We all want to be healthy. I just want people to trust their liver more than they trust a marketing campaign.
And I want people to feel empowered to take a break from their habits, whether that's through juice, whole foods, or just mindfulness. There is clearly more to explore here regarding the long-term effects of these rituals.
Indeed. The best cleanse might just be a good night's sleep and a salad.
Thank you for joining us on The Debate. We hope this helps you navigate the produce aisle a little differently next time.
Stay skeptical and stay healthy.